Over recent months, my dad has been making me watch some of his collection of Asian splatter movies. Some of them are beyond ridiculous to watch. But one that did catch my attention was Biozombie, a 1990s Hong Kong zombie movie set in a rundown shopping centre, directed by Wilson Yip, who went on to be famous for the Ip Man series of kung fu films. It tells the story of a couple of petty crooks and a small collection of other misfits and weirdos holding out against a zombie plague released by some sort of military bioweapon. That might be a description of any number of movies, but what made it appealing to me was the way it squeezed a lot of film out of a very low budget and limited location. Mainly just a couple of corridors of a shopping centre and the car park below it. How it managed to not just create a sense of terror and thrills, but also to be a very funny satire of vapid consumer culture. It also sent me on a bit of a journey into finding out about the director who created the template for that sort of movie. The amazing George Romero. And in particular, his iconic zombie film trilogy. George Romero was a college dropout film obsessive in Pittsburgh in the 1960s when he got the idea to make a low-budget horror movie. Set on a location in an old farmhouse, which he and the crew lived in whilst they made the film, he created The Night of the Living Dead. Although now it seems old-fashioned and filmed on cheap black and white film stock at a time when most movies are in colour, it tells the story of a motley crew of people trapped in the house while zombie hordes bear down on them as civilization beyond the house utterly breaks down. The film is interesting for a few reasons. The first is that it basically creates the modern zombie film template, shambling under people staggering towards you in growing numbers until you are overwhelmed. Before then, zombies were something quite different.
You all fear me, and you have reason to.
But the Romero zombie basically defined everything that has come since. Secondly, it clearly establishes some of the trademarks of Romero's filmmaking. He was director, cameraman, and editor for this film. He made a sense of claustrophobia and rising dread. Close-up shots of people, sometimes from strange angles to emphasise the feeling of being trapped, and an enthusiastic use of practical special effects. Thirdly, it was a film with a political message to it. Night of the Living Dead was made at a time when there were race riots in the United States, and everyone was fighting over who was in charge. Romero wasn't scared about putting that into the film, not least by casting a black man, Dwayne Jones, as probably the only hero in the movie. Romero's second major zombie movie is Dawn of the Dead, the most direct inspiration for Biozombie, the film that sent me on this journey. Set in a shopping centre, it focuses on 4 people hiding from the continuing zombie plague. Although the film itself is quite bleak, it has a lot of really funny moments, as it highlights the similarities between brain-dead zombies and the brain-dead consumers they once were. This is the focus of Romero's satire this time around. It's got the same Romero close-ups and tension building, and a lot of ambiguity at times about who is worse. The humans who have a choice about how to behave, or the zombies who just want to eat flesh? With the introduction of a new special effects artist, Tom Savini, it also indulges in some, for its time, quite eye-popping special effects. Perhaps benefiting from the real-life horrors experienced during Savini's time in Vietnam. The third film of the series is utterly bleak. Day of the Dead. Set in a military base holding out against the continuing zombie plague. It starts off as a bit of an ordinary-looking movie. Everything about it looks like any other 1980s military action film. But as the film goes on, it gets darker and closer to Romero's previous films in style and tone. In this film, what humour there is in the detail. The fragments of zombies' past lives revealed in their clothing and antics, such as the sad but funny domesticated zombie Bub. What you do get, though, again, is a strong political message, this time about the corruption of power.
Sit down or so help me God, I'll have you shot.
The dangers of science, and perhaps the inevitability that eventually everything that makes up a civilization will fall apart. Romero didn't just make zombie movies, though. He also made thrillers, vampire movies, conventional horror movies.
This is going to be extremely painful, Mr. Verrill.
A ridiculous film about Knights on Motorcycles. He even came back later in his career and made some more movies in his zombie series, although they aren't nearly as good as the first three. He also, when he got older, participated in some of the most brilliant interviews about film I've ever watched.
The color palettes for the different stories are just so wide, and the whole thing just made me realize what an expressive form film could be.
He's an amazing person to listen to if you want to understand how films are made, or the brilliance of cinema.
You can borrow from all these different mediums and glue it all together and make something spectacular out of it.
Amazingly, his favourite film is the 1951 film Tales of Hoffmann, which he apparently watched over 50 times when he was young. And he can describe every scene in detail.
You know, the Greek island and the stairway that the doll dances down, you know, a carpet or flat on the floor of the stage. And
when you watch it, you really do get the feeling you're seeing something special. So I started with splatter movies and ended up watching 70-year-old opera films. But on the way I learnt a lot. Even if you aren't into zombie films or horror, I really do think it's worth giving up the time to learn about and from George Romero. He's completely amazing.
If you shoot the head, you kill the ghoul. Shoot the head, kill the ghoul.